project I've been working on. It's been my baby for a couple months now. A little bit about me. My name is Hillary Petrozziello. Born and raised in Ono for 18 years, in a town of 120 people. And then I went to Philadelphia. I studied in the 6th largest city. And throughout that process, it really made me curious to turn my lens in my studies at Temple as a photojournalism major, to turn my lens on my hometown. So, my project is a book, and I set out in spring 2012 to photograph everyone in Ono. I photographed 112 of the 120 residents, and I interviewed 52 of them, and put together a 3-part book. The 3 parts of the book are landmarks. I did a section on new photography where I got old photographs and then went back to the same location, shot them again, and I did my favorite section was Meet the Neighbors. So this is where I'm from. And now this is where I live, which is a little crazy. I looked it up this morning, and the population in Philly is 1,536,471 people. And where I'm from is 120 people and 2 streets, and the post office is in my garage, literally. So that works out to 12,804 Onos in Philadelphia. Okay, so a little bit about Ono. I don't know how much you guys know about it, but it evolved in the mid-1800s as a hub for older, aging farmers. They wanted to be closer to the resources in town, so it sort of evolved like that. In its entire history, it's only had 13 postmasters, which I think is really cool. And the village has had 3 names. It went through Seltzerville, Mount Nebo, and Ono. One time, if you want to know the story behind it, I can tell you. Yeah, so it was actually surprisingly once a sort of bustling little village. They had a shirt factory, they had a cider mill, they had all kinds of things. And now that's sort of, it's a community in transition, I would say, because all of the businesses are gone.
Not all the businesses.
Almost.
I was going to say.
Almost, not all of them, but they're a handful. There's Ansbach Auto. There's the church and the post office. So here we are. And that little thing, one street to the other street, that's Ono. So throughout the course of my project, I went around to neighbors and I got to speak with lots of people. It was really awesome. And people let me into their lives and their homes, and they uncovered basement archives of photos that no one knew existed, of like photos dating back to the 1800s, this little town. Landscape shots and portraits of people that used to live there. I found a memoir, this whole stack of papers is research that I've been working on for the book. And I found an unfinished town profile by the Historical Society. So that really got me going, and I wanted to continue what we left off. So you can't see too well here, but some photos, some vintage photos I came across. I'll go quickly because not too much stuff.
Go on the other side instead. Your arm won't be across the screen.
Oh, there you go. This is the re-photography. That's what the Farmer's Way intersection used to look like. So, my book. I have a draft right now. It's ultimately going to be 200-some pages. I want to print it on archival paper and leather bound it, and the idea is that hopefully someday someone will be curious and stumble across it, like 200 years from now or something. And then we just have this snapshot of this little town that's quirky and weird, and the first thing I tell people when I get to know them, I'm like, from this town called Ono. That's a page in the book. Meet the Neighbors. Portraits. So the images and words of Ono residents reveal the neighborliness of small-town America, as well as longing for other times, fond memories of childhood, and truncated dreams, hope for the future, and some ideas for town improvement. But above all, a willingness to open doors and have their stories be told. So some portraits of people. The coolest part about this whole project was how open everyone was, and like really warm and receptive to me. To like come back to this place that I'd been away from for 4 years and sort of look at it in a whole new way. Thinking about like how I grew up in Ono, breaking bones and running around and doing lemonade stands and whatever I did as a kid. And then to come back and study the way that it's changed, it's changing. Of course, my dad. This is a Pennsylvania Dutch quote. I'm going to butcher it, so I'm not going to attempt to read it.
I'm wondering if somebody here can read it.
Ruth, can you read that?
Pennsylvania Dutch quote. I didn't see it, go ahead.
Looks like it is what it is.
As is we as is. Mona is net we is dissect. In other words, it is what it is, and just because of that, it's not the way it should be.
That's right. Thank you. That was a quote that I came across in a memoir. A quote I came across in a memoir written about Ono. In 1914, I believe. This guy wrote down basically what I am trying to do. And he went through town and he talked about all the different roles that everyone played and just how the community fabric worked, and quirky stories about, you know, people floating watermelons down the river and just all of this like nonsense like that I stumbled upon. But this quote really stood out to me because it's sort of what I've observed, at least my perception of this town that I grew up in, that I love and have so many mixed emotions about. It's so cool. But like, it is what it is, but it isn't how it ought to be. One of the themes that kept coming up in my interviews was the sense that the community has deteriorated, and that for whatever reason, neighbors don't know each other anymore. And it was surprising to me when I broke it down. Actually, it was mostly young people in town. The majority of people are in their 20s or children, and yet they, you know, have not taken the initiative or whatever it is to sit out on their porches or sit on their stoops or, you know, interact with one another. So the idea with this being that once you put yourself out there and you interact with these people, you can, you know, create a project like this and introduce the neighbors to one another, you know, a common forum for discussion. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of things here.
Are they still locals? Are they still local? That, I mean, they were
Yeah.
born and raised there?
Yeah, mostly everyone was, and so I was surprised by that. And people cited, you know, I said, what has changed? And they said, well, you know, I don't let my kids run around like I used to, or, you know, I lock my doors now at night and things like this. And I'm wondering what it's about, you know. I'm
So
just
you don't know what
curious.
it's about?
I have my ideas. I think, you know, cars and technology have taken people outside of the community, so you don't necessarily have to have that fabric. You don't need a store right there when you can drive to, like, a Walmart or something, you know. So I think the internet has changed a lot. People are indoors now. They don't, you know. So it's sort of sad to me in a sense, but also I think this project has the potential to maybe change that a little bit in some senses.
So you didn't see, you don't see children outside playing in the summertime? Nobody, no pickup ball teams and anything like that?
Not as much. Not as much. And there are surprisingly a lot of kids in town.
That's just not a no-no, I don't think. You don't see that, exactly, exactly.
Everything's organized.
Right. So I'm not sure what that's about.
And what did you say you went to school for?
Photojournalism.
Photojournalism.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't tell you that. I work for Philly.com and the Philadelphia Inquirer and the Daily News now. Just graduated in May. And I'm a freelance photographer, which is crazy.
You have your website, they should bring your website.
Oh yeah,
Give us
yeah,
your
that's
website.
true. Put it down. My website is gazing-witness.com.
When you were still living in Ono, did you and your family sit out on the porch and meet people like that?
Yeah, I mean, I was outside a lot. I actually played football for Northern Lebanon because that's what I did as a kid. There was all boys in my town growing up, and that were my age. And so I played football, backyard football with them. And I don't know, I was always outside, always barefoot, always running around, and I feel like I knew a lot of people in town. Now people have cited like a fear, you know, like that there aren't the eyes out anymore, so they can't let their kids just run and play.
What made you, I mean, you're in Philadelphia and you're studying photojournalism. I mean, what drew you back to deciding to do this project?
That's a very good question. I think initially I had some unsettled feelings toward the place where I had been raised, you know, and to like have such a difference between like growing up in this one street town, like, and having that sort of community fabric and being able to say hello to people, and then you go to Philly and it's like you make eye contact with somebody and they just like look away, away. And so I was curious about that and like what the differences were in the people and the mindset. So I really just wanted to talk to people, get to know everyone. Yeah, a fresh light.
I think there's a possibility your book will become a movie someday.
I would love that, but it has to become a book first.
So what's your deadline? What's your goal?
Well, my goal is within a year, maybe 2 years, depending. I want to continue photographing, processing images. I want to go hang out with people in their houses and get more like in-depth studies with people, rather than just portraits. And then also ultimately I have a designer now who's going to do the book, find a publisher. I'm going to different university presses, Drexel University, Temple University, UPenn has a press, and try to pitch it to them when it's completed and see if somebody will publish it. And if not, then I'm going to raise the funds myself. There's a significant amount of that needs to happen.
How much do you think it will cost to publish the book?
I'm thinking probably around $5,000 for what I want to do, because it's going to be limited copies. I want to distribute them to people in town, people that are in the book. We've also talked about doing an exhibit at the fire company, and it's where sort of like introducing people when one another comes in. But it's my dream right now. It's my baby, and I've put countless hours into it, and I want to really like get to a point where I can give it back, you know. I just want to.
Have you created an exhibit?
Yes, actually. At Temple, I was the president of Aperture Agency, and that was our photography collective on campus. So I've curated a handful of exhibits through them. So I need to get
Maybe we could do it in the library.
Yeah, we could do that. That'd be really cool.
Do you think that this research that you've done on your small town where you've grown up, I mean, do you think that's changed the way that you communicate and function with people in Philadelphia?
Definitely, hands down, because you have like an expectation of how people should like treat one another.
Right.
And sometimes I feel like that's gone in like such a large city, and that people are sort of rushing a lot. And it sounds stereotypical, but it's really true. I had a lot of really awesome experiences when I was shooting this. There was one woman who I asked everyone their age and their profession, and she makes candy. She works for Van Winkle's, and she made opera fudge. And so I was like out shooting a whole day, and I was like out for like hours and hours, and I was exhausted. And I come home, and there were like 3 boxes of opera fudge just in my fridge.
Ooh.
And like that
It was all worth it.
Yeah, exactly. and that was really sweet. There's just a number of interactions with people, or just people telling me stories about when my father first moved out here. Both of my parents were from Jersey. When they first moved out here, his factory burnt down to the ground within a few years of moving here. And they were telling me how they were pulling water from people's swimming pools to put the fire out, and how, you know, they hopped out of bed, like still in the PJs, and the keys were in the ignition, and they just like went, and just these sort of stories. Stories about, you know, people going to Fort Indian Town Gap, and, you know, when it was like still segregated, and what that was like, or when, you know, they still had full service gas stations, and how that sort of thing is gone and left, and I want to know where it is. You know, but
Do you think you'll stay in Pennsylvania?
I have no idea.
I think a lot of times people go to school and then decide, you know, to do better than just leave Pennsylvania.
Right.
And if that continues, Pennsylvania, you know, loses. So, you know, our governors used to always say, "Please stay."
Right. Right.
And, you know, and I think we need more students and people like you to stay.
I certainly think it's a major issue, because, you know, to go off and away to college and then learn all of these things and never like come back to your roots.
Right.
And
It doesn't do any of us any good.
right. So maybe in a sense I can take the skills that I've learned